going to be recorded, and I'm recording this just now. So for those of you just tuning in, you didn't miss too much. I just introduced myself like I always do. You can get my information on my website, and I'll share that as well. And we're just going over the agenda for today's session. We're going to be building our first Power Automate workflows with Excel. We're going to be looking at Power FX. That's the programming language inside of Power Automate. And then we'll be looking at using Copilot to get help building our workflows. So those are my use cases that I have planned. And again, due to timing and so forth, we may have more or less time. So I may get into some more demos, or we might stop it here even a little shorter. We'll just kind of be flexible here. All right. So our first step here is we're going to create Power Automate templates for Excel. We're going to use them. We're going to create a basic clock in, clock out workflow. So this is one of the templates that Microsoft has built for us to use and get started on. We're going to use that workflow just for our first spin around with Power Automate, understand how this tool works. There should be a workbook for you. Let me send out the notes in a second here. Okay, so it is in the file. Okay, let me put the link to the downloads in the chat. And as always, if anybody comes in late, you are welcome to share this file. I will keep it up after the event, so you can have a copy of it later on another computer. Let me put that in the chat, and we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, welcome from Stephen. Hello, Matthew. Okay, so we are going to use this link here that I just shared. And you are welcome to, again, copy and paste that if anybody comes in asking for files, or if you want to share with a colleague, and we'll talk about kind of promoting these events and how that helps me later on. Okay, so go ahead and download that. I'll give you a second to do so. I'm assuming most of you are on a PC. I'm definitely going to be more useful if you are. Don't know a lot about how this works on a Mac, if at all, to be honest, because it is a Microsoft tool. Okay, so I'm going to extract this folder here, and you should see eventually. Okay, it looks like I already have one of these files open. That's fine. As long as you have it extracted, you should have a couple files here. So we're going to work on this first one. We're going to work on Copilot eventually, and here are the slides. README, you don't have to worry about. That's something that is, because this is hosted on GitHub, it has that file. So don't worry about that one. Just focus on the PowerPoint and the workbooks. All right, so everybody's able to do that. You have the link there. So let's go ahead and push on here. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with this first flow file. Now, the first thing I'm going to have you do is you're going to need to upload this to your OneDrive account that has Power Automate. Now, Power Automate, like most things Microsoft, unfortunately has a really complicated licensing structure. So if you don't see some of these things, unfortunately, there's only so much I can do in an online session. A lot of it might have to do with the ways that your IT department pushes updates out and gives access to you for things. So there's really not a lot I can do right now. You can certainly continue to follow along though, and try to get those tools for you. I did post some stuff in the event link about exactly what license you need, so you can check there. It just updates so quickly that I would just have you look at the documentation rather than me try to repeat it, just because it is so confusing, even for a Microsoft MVP. So what I'm doing right now is just uploading this to my OneDrive. I'm actually going to upload this into my second account here. I've got like a testing environment for us to use here. So whatever your OneDrive account is, hopefully you have it on your desktop. Go ahead and upload this, because we are going to be using our files in OneDrive. You could also use SharePoint if you have access to that, but just to keep it simple for right now, we're going to go ahead and save this to our OneDrive. It looks like I'm having a couple problems here, but I'm sure that we will get this situated shortly. So go ahead and do that as I'm doing the same. Okay, we want to make sure, okay, I have first flow open there. Let me go ahead and open it in my OneDrive as well, and then we will continue on. So our goal is going to be, we are setting up a clock in, clock out kind of a workflow here using Power Automate. May not be the most exciting example, however, it is the one that Microsoft starts us out with as a template here. So we're going to go ahead and use that. All right, let's go ahead and just leave that as is, and hopefully this still works. Okay, I might need to sign into my training account here. Let me do one thing. Sorry for the okay. I'll let everybody get situated with that. You're going to find Power Automate is one of the more tricky parts about it is just the fact that you are dealing with a lot of different tools. You are going between Teams and Outlook and Excel and building all sorts of workflows. So it's a little bit more intense in terms of setup than other tools necessarily are. Okay, so let me just try one more thing here and we'll keep going. I did see a couple things in the chat. I'll take a look at those in a second. Okay. And again, if anybody is looking for those downloads, I gotta take a look at that chat in a second. Feel free to upload it. Okay, so yeah, I think we should be good now. All right, let me go back to the chat. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, maybe there wasn't anything in the chat. All right, so where we're going to go right now is automate. Now, if you don't see this tab, then again, that's just due to the settings that you have. One thing that you're going to see here is Office scripts. There are some ways to use Office scripts and Power Automate together. We're not going to get to that today, but that might be topic for later on. So Office scripts is really a tool meant for you to work inside one specific workbook. You can sort of think of it as a tool similar to VBA. The biggest difference, again, is that Office scripts is really built to be a cloud-first tool. So it uses a subset of JavaScript. Okay, it works very well on the cloud. Everything is stored on the cloud. So it's really a cloud-first, cloud-friendly tool, whereas VBA was developed more in a time kind of on-premises, desktop-based computing. Now, a lot of people have strong opinions on VBA versus Office scripts. That's what I'll leave it at for right now. We're going to move on to automate work right here. So what this is going to show you is our flow templates. All right, so we're going to look at this. It should open. We'll give it a second here. Okay, so we're going to have some different templates here that we can start with. And you're going to notice that these involve Excel in various legs of the process. Some of them start with Excel, some of them end with Excel. Some of them have 2 legs, some of them have more. So one of them, for example, says schedule an Office script to run in Excel. So if you have something, maybe you want to refresh all the connections in your workbook, or you need to always format this worksheet a specific way, you can set that to run on a schedule. And again, that is on the cloud, so you don't need to have necessarily a computer turned on, and it's all set up on the cloud. So you can take a look at these. We're not going to use any of these right now because we want to use the time clock option, which is under templates. So this is going to open up a new page for you. It is going to take you to make.powerautomate.com. Now, hopefully you're able to get into this page. And again, if not, that's just a sign that you do not have the permissions to use this tool at this time. You're still welcome to follow along here. So there are all sorts of templates here. And again, you see your search term is Excel. You don't necessarily have to use these. These are just things that Power Automate has set up for you. So we are going to try to find the one. And this, again, like a lot of technology these days, changes very quickly. Okay, so this one says track your working hours in Excel from Excel Online Business Spreadsheet. We're going to go ahead and click on this one. What I think I could do is even click on this and then put the link if you don't see it. So again, track your working hours in Excel Online. Okay, I thought I could copy paste that. Okay, let's copy and paste this in there. So that's in the chat. You should be able to just search for that and find it. Or if this link works, you're welcome to use it. All right. So you're going to see we have a few things set up here. We're going to give the user a push button. And then what's going to happen is that, as described here, each button is going to log the current time to an Excel. Where it says Excel Online Business Table, it's a regular Excel workbook. It is on your OneDrive. It says online, but you can open it on your desktop as well. It's fine. You're going to get a push notification for a successful flow run. That's new. I don't remember this part. I wonder if we can actually even disable that. We'll get to that later. Okay, so my main task here is that I want to set up a little workflow that a user can turn the button on, right? Click the button, start or stop, and it's going to trigger an entry into the Excel workbook. Again, not the most exciting one, but this is one of the more basic starter workflows, and it gives you a sense for like understanding how Power Automate works here. So let's go ahead and click continue. All right, so you see there are a few steps here. I'm going to get rid of this last one because this is a newer thing that they've added to this template. I'm going to go ahead and just right click that and delete it. So it says send me a mobile notification. One thing that this does call out though is that Power Automate works very well on mobile. There is a Power Automate app for Mac and Android or iOS. So you can run your flows, monitor them, and use these flows on mobile devices as well. So it's not just for the desktop environment. But I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Okay, we don't need that. All right, so you'll see that the way this is going to work, it says manually trigger a flow. Let's start with that one. This is set up in kind of a linear order, right? So you want to think about this as kind of a series of like triggers or a series of causes and effects here. Okay, so the first one we're going to do is manually trigger a flow. Okay, I am going to add an input here. Okay, so basically what's going to happen is the user is going to click this button, right? That's what the manual trigger means. Okay, when that happens, I want to collect some data. Okay, so I'm going to use this yes, no right here. Let me do that again. I think if I delete this, let's add an input. So these are things that Power Automate's going to ask the user to collect that data when they run this flow. So let's go ahead and click yes and no. And instead of yes or no, I'm going to do something like start or stop. Okay, or you could do like time in, time out. I'm not going to use the dash there. I think we could. The issue I found with using these dashes that sometimes on the back end, Power Automate gets confused thinking that that's actually like a file path. So I try not to use dashes, backspaces, and things like that. Let's do start or stop. Okay, so that is going to be collected by the user, and they are going to, and let's actually select, please select start or stop. Okay, so this is telling the user, are they starting their work? Are they finishing their work? And there'll be like a little toggle button for them to choose. Okay, fair enough. All right, any questions so far? Everybody feeling good about that part? Cool. All right, so now let's go into the next step. It says add a row into a table. So now what we need to do is specify where this table is stored. Okay, so we created this first step. Power Automate is going to collect that data, and then it's going to add it into your workbook. So we need to specify where this is going to go to. This is going to be my OneDrive. Again, I'm assuming you have it posted there. You'll have to specify what document library and so on and so forth. This folder structure is a little bit hard to navigate through, so hopefully you posted it somewhere not too like deep in your folder structure. Mine is right there, first flow, okay. And then finally the table. So I didn't really talk about this, but our data needs to be in tables. So any data that you're sending into Power Automate or getting out of Power Automate, you want to have that in that table format. Just in case you're not familiar, let me open that up real quick here. And okay, my mouse is acting weird on this screen. Let me go over here. Still acting kind of weird. Okay, so I have this formatted as a table. Okay, you'll notice that as I toggle in and out of here, table design comes up. I can also go to formulas here, name manager. Make sure you give that table a nice name. That's just going to make it a little easier in case you have multiple tables in your workbook to identify what table you really want to select. So that's what we're going to do to set this up. So we have everything mapped out. We have a very simple workflow right now. The user is going to toggle a button Power Automate's going to ask it, are you starting or stopping work? Once that happens, it's going to get logged to this table. Now, the last thing I'm going to do here is down here at the bottom, it says show parameters. This part, what I need to do, I am going to just clear these out right now where it says the ones that are mapped. And let's click show all here. Because what I'm going to do is make sure that the data that I have, it says first flow, and it's worth opening up the file just one more time so we have a handle on what we have. We have in or out, okay? Maybe I could call this start stop or something. I'm going to leave it as is for right now. And then the time. Those are our two columns that we want to have mapped from Power Automate into our workbook. Okay, so with that understood, let's go back to Power Automate and make sure that those two inputs are getting mapped to our data. So we have in or out right here. We have time. I don't want these other ones. Okay. Date time format I'm going to talk about later. We're actually, okay, I wanted time as well. Let's get rid of these other ones. Date time format, timestamp, all that stuff we'll worry about later. You'll see that with this data going into Excel, we're going to need to make some adjustments with how the date gets stored and shown in the workbook. So these are the two parameters that we want. And again, you could have come through here with a drop down, but I kind of like to see everything I have available to me and then select from there. If you get to this point where you kind of lost that sidebar, you can just click again on that step and you'll get it back. Okay, so we have in or out. Now we have two options for how we want to input this. So the first one says enter the data from the previous step. So each step of the process, Power Automate is going to generate or collect data, and those data points are going to be available for use in the next steps of the output. It's kind of like a recipe, right? You know, you add ingredients, those ingredients, maybe you combine two ingredients, you get a new product, and you can use that product in something else and so forth. So our two options here are to use the data as is, or what we could do down here is insert an expression. So this is basically going to be like using a formula. We are going to be using a formula using, in part, the inputs collected by Power Automate. So we're going to keep it simple for right now. And let's go ahead and just use the data that was generated as is by Power Automate into our flow here. So what I like to do is just click see more. You're going to see that Power Automate actually does collect some of this stuff automatically. Okay, so this isn't going to be user generated necessarily, or at least not to their knowledge. There are things that people within the organization, you know, we're going to pick up this data if we have it. So let's go ahead, and we do want for in or out, we're going to put start or stop. Okay, and then for time, I'm going to go ahead and let's put the timestamp here. Okay, so again, click that first one, see more. Okay, the timestamp is just going to give us a little more detail on the date than that date field. So I'm going to use that one because we do want to be pretty specific in terms of, I don't think the date's going to show us like the minutes and seconds and so forth. Okay, everybody doing good with this so far? Cool. All right. So let's go ahead and save this. Okay, now you shouldn't get any errors. If you do, let me know. Try to walk through that. All right, you should see this. Our flow is ready to go. We recommend you test it. Now, if you see something like this where and it just went away, it's a little inconsistent, but you know, Power Automate is mapping all of these objects into like variables on the back end and giving them unique identifiers and things like that. So if you see something like time clock get converted into a bunch of letters and numbers, that's really what's happening. It's just Power Automate kind of doing its thing on the back end. So it says we recommend you test it. Now you can't test it right here inside of Power Automate, but what I'm going to do is let's go back to that workbook and test it from there. Okay, because probably our end user doesn't want to have to go into Power Automate to use this thing. They probably want to run it from their workbook. So let's go ahead and open that back up here. Okay, and it might be worth like closing it and reopening it just because we are kind of pushing out something new to the workbook. So I'm going to go ahead and do that really quickly. Again, we want to go back to first flow. Make sure it's the one in your OneDrive and not the one in your downloads folder, because we need to make sure that we're opening the one that is tied to the flow. So let's go back to automate. And if all things worked correctly, we should see, fingers crossed here. Okay, yes, we have it. So it says flows in this workbook, and I had a little panic because at first it didn't associate it, but now we see track your working hours in Excel Online. We can rename this if we want. We could call this like time clock or something like that. I think we might have to go back to Power Automate to do that. So again, I could click this button, come back here. It is going to open in kind of a pop-up window if we open it. Looks like I would need to log in separately. So let's just leave it as is with this name. Track your hours, working hours in Excel Online. So let's go ahead and run this thing. Okay, we'll hit the three dots here. Okay, we're going to run this. Okay, make sure you're connected to everything. It's going to make sure that all your OneDrive and Excel, everything information is up to date. So here we have our little time sheet, right? We can start it or we can stop it. I'm going to go ahead and say, let's start my work here. Okay, my flow successfully started. To monitor it, go to your flow runs page. So every flow you're going to build does have some analytics. And it looks like I might need to log in anyway, so we can see this. Let's do my training here. You can monitor and make sure that things ran. Okay, let me get my password. You can kind of see that it already ran, but I'm going to go ahead and open this anyway so we can see it. Okay, so here's our run history. It'll give you any errors. You can see the log of all the runs here, just so you get a little bit. And there's some other analytics that you can get for how often these runs are going, if they're working or not, and so forth. But you're going to see this is what we have here. So we have a couple of bits of information. I did have that first row, so if you just want to delete it, I just wanted a placeholder. We got a row appended, and we have some data in like not that great of output, right? It's there. It's what we want. It says false, and then the timestamp is there, but these are both pretty hard to read in the workbook. So what we're going to do next is rather than just take that data as is in Power Automate, we are going to use the Power FX language just to clean it up and make it look a little bit nicer for our users. Any questions so far about this? Okay, let's go back here. Okay, so we did that. We built our first workflow using a template. We built a basic like clock in, clock out kind of a workflow. All right, now we're going to do this again, continue from that previous example. How can we improve the appearance of the outputs in Excel? Now, if you want to follow along, this blog post is a good one. I hate that I can't copy and paste easily out of there, but let me put this in the chat. You do have this slide deck in your resources as well. And let me just post the whole resource kit in the chat in case anybody doesn't have it. Okay, download resources. We are recording this as well. All right, so let's continue on here with our workflow. Whoops, I didn't want to download that. I wanted to open up that blog post. Close and okay, no. There we go. All right. So I'm going to go back to Power Automate here. And let me, okay. Actually, let's do one more thing just to get a little more creative here. So I'm going to go to my first flow. And, another thing and Power Automate in general can be pretty iterative. So what I'm going to do now is I want the start or stop. I want the time. And I'm also going to say like, comments. Okay. So I'm going to make the user explain, what they're planning to do that day, or if they're clocking out, what they got done or what they still need to do. So we're going to add another column to this here. So go ahead and add a column to that comments, and we'll see how that one works as well. So now let's go ahead and close this. Okay. And let's go ahead and go back to Power Automate. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and let's rename this as well, like time tracker or something like that. And I'm going to save it. And let's go back to our flows. So we're here at all of my flows, and you'll see they're all of them that I created here. Now let's go back to time tracker. And again, our goal is just to clean up the outputs that were created by Power Automate. So the first thing I'm going to do here is let's actually go to manually trigger a flow. We're going to have the user input two things now. So start or stop is fine. I'm good with that. Again, we could say clock in or clock out, whatever makes more sense to you. Let's add another input. And now I'm just going to say text here. Oops, not another yes, no. But let's do text. And let's say comments. Please explain your tasks or outstanding items, etc. Explaining the user what they should do with that field. Okay, now let's go ahead and go back here. So again, our goal is in part to, first of all, the comments is right there. So let's go ahead and add that into our parameters. Whoops, okay, go back there. Oh, okay, yep. Okay, so comments are there. Now this one should be good as is. The user's going to input some text and we're just going to display that text in the workbook. Shouldn't be a problem. Let's go ahead and add the input there. And again, if we click show more, or what we can do is search for those data points. So comments is right there. That'll get mapped to that column in the table, basically. The ones that we're more worried about right now are the in or out or the timestamp. So let's go ahead and focus on those. Now the first one I'm going to do is let's focus on the timestamp. So this didn't render very well in Excel, as a lot of us know. Date times in Excel are a little less than desirable, butt of a lot of internet jokes and so forth. So Excel handles dates in serial numbers, and that's a little different than most programs. So what we're going to do is use a PowerFX expression here to just clean up the appearance of that output. So I'm going to back out of here and let's click FX here. So what this is going to do, as we mentioned, is going to use the PowerFX programming language. You can use a lot of things for this. This isn't just necessarily to format the appearance of your data. But if you need to maybe check for errors, it has like error handling features, and you can search for, just like Excel, these are kind of grouped together in different functions, right? Converting different units, maybe different systems are using different units, dates and times, referencing things. You can do all sorts of things here to get a little more powerful with your inputs. So let's go ahead and I'm going to start writing my function. Let's do format date and time because that's what we're trying to do here. Okay. And I'm going to open my parentheses. You'll see this does have the IntelliSense just like Excel. So once we get to what we want, just hit tab. It'll complete our thoughts there. Now I'm going to go over here to dynamic content because we want to refer to that dynamic content as part of the expression. So what I'm going to do is let's find our timestamp. Okay. I'm going to select that there. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is provide the formatting that I want for the cells. I'm going to put this formula in the chat in a second. So if you're not following, don't worry about it. Let's do Y. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste it myself here, just so we're all on the same page. Don't make any mistakes. So let's do year, month, and day, and then we'll have the hours, minutes, and the seconds. Okay. So that's our format. And let's go ahead and add that. So you'll see now I have a custom expression right there. Let me go ahead and put that in the chat. All right. So that's done. Now what we're going to do is fix this one where it says start and stop. We want to actually have it say something like, start and stop instead of true or false. Okay, so this one, what we're going to do is let's clear that one out again. We'll create a dynamic expression. We're going to use an if function for that. Okay, so again, we're getting true and false return. That's a pretty good set of values to use Boolean expressions for that. So we're going to do if. We are going to look for our dynamic content. Actually, I wanted to write if up there. Okay, now we're going to look for our dynamic content. And we should say start or stop. Okay, so you'll see, right, this is a Boolean expression, or we're going to say true, false values here. Stop, start. Okay. So if the value is true, it means we're stopping. If the value is false, we're starting. If you want to think about the on and off states, right? The on would stop, the off would start. Okay, let me put that in the chat as well. All right. Okay. So that looks good to me. Let's go ahead and add that. So now again, we are custom formatting these outputs. We have another field that the user is going to select. So let's go ahead and save this. And again, I'm going to go back to the workbook to run this. Okay, looks good. And again, don't worry about this. These are just the unique identifiers and things on the back end being used. You may or may not continue to see them in Power Automate. So let's go ahead and I'm going to reopen Excel here. I don't need that pop up. And let's go back to my first flow. And again, make sure you are using the one in your OneDrive. Okay, let's go to Automate. And we're going to go to Automate Work. Okay, takes a second, but we have our time tracker. Let's go ahead and run this and see what we get here. We are going to be asked to provide our inputs again. Okay, so now we have two. The comments are required. I think there's a way to make them not required, but that's just the default here. Start or stop, obviously we have to pick one of these. Okay, so I'm going to say let's stop this time, and I'm going to say, still need to, write custom Power FX function for workflow or something like that. All right, so let's go ahead. Now we have these two set up. We'll go ahead and run it. Okay, now that we know that it should work, I mean, we could go back to the analytics, but we'll wait a couple seconds here. Okay, so that looks good to me. So we have our stopping time. Okay, it looks like this is in military time, so if you wanted to change that, I'm sure you could. We have our comments set up there, and we could continue to use this. And again, we could set up like an app or something like that in Power Automate, using Power Automate's app for users to use this. So it's a, kind of a simple example. Maybe it's not the most practical. I'm sure there are better ways to create a time clock, but just to get you working through the basics of this tool, I think that's a pretty good example. All right. Any questions about this one? All right, I'll wait there. And as you're thinking, let me pull up a couple of extras here. It looks like there's something coming through the chat. Take a look and then continue. Okay, I'll let the chat keep going. Just to we'll take a little break here. We're not actually like a full break, but just for announcements. Okay, so the first thing I want to share is I do have some more sessions coming up. I try to do one of these every like week or other week. It just depends on travel and other factors, but you'll see that I do have one coming up on Monday on Power Query. That's going to be based on my book. I have quite a few other ones coming up based on my book, Modern Data Analytics in Excel. You do not need to have read the book to attend these. They really are meant to be as a primer for you, and you can go on to read just to learn a little more. There's some other stuff coming up. These are scheduled until I think like June or something, so they are pretty far out in advance. But you'll see things like Python and Excel, AI, Copilots, all the trendy stuff as well, and some of these, I don't want to call them older topics, but things like Power Pivot and Power Query that have been in Excel for over 10 years now, that are still good to know. Not everybody's using them yet. Okay, so that's the first announcement. The other thing is, and this is one that, and I'll put this in the chat as well, is you'll notice that when you joined Eventbrite, you didn't get asked for money. I'm not going to ask you for money now. These are 100% free. There aren't any gimmicks. And I could almost guarantee you that if you went to another webinar for something to do with Power Automate or Excel, you're not even going to get that much content. They're just going to tease you into buying their course. I don't do stuff like that. I find it kind of gimmicky. I really just want to help the community, but in exchange for that, I do need data, and I need data on what you're finding valuable, what you liked, what you didn't like. So this helps you as well. So I put this link in the chat, and I'll do that in the recording as well. With that being said as well, feel free to share this on LinkedIn, invite your colleagues, whatever. Again, this is free, and I can't think of anywhere you would go that you get free stuff, and you don't even get a tip jar passed around besides the internet. So we'll take advantage of it. It is what it is. I love teaching this stuff, so I hope you love learning it. But this is really what helps me. I can use this just to promote my business, and it's really kind of what keeps the wheels turning for me to continue to do these. So with that being said, we're going to do one more example using Copilot. So this is going to be a slightly more complex example. It should take us until the end of the hour. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Again, if you do have any more questions, I'm happy to answer them, and the recording will go out. Question about, is Power FX exclusive to Power Automate? Is it used with Power Apps? I believe it's used in other places, and I think Power Apps uses it as well. It's been a while since I've used Power Apps. So if anybody has better context on that, but I think it is used cross Power Platform. It's a good question there. All right. Okay. Let's go back to the slides here. And okay, one last example here. So we're going to use Copilot in Power Automate to build a more complex workflow here. You should have the Power Automate Copilot file. So let's get started just by taking a look at that, making sure it gets uploaded to Power Automate, to OneDrive, and then we'll kind of build around it here. So let me open up this file. Okay. So again, this is a somewhat basic example, but you got to start somewhere. These are monthly workplace occasions, okay? So our goal is that the first of every month, we're going to email out, and we are going to post on Teams just a basic, well wishes for these individuals, okay? So again, how would you make this more dynamic, make it update for each month and all that good stuff? You could do that. Rome wasn't built in a day. Let's go ahead and just assume that this is what we want right here with this data. So again, make sure that this gets uploaded to your OneDrive, and ideally in a place that is easy to reach here, because it is a bit of a hassle mining through the folder structure there. So we're going to go ahead and close this out. Okay, let's go back to the slides. So again, create a monthly email post to Teams based on the data. Now again, if you do want to follow along with this one, you can check out this resource as well. And let me put that in the chat here. All right. Okay, apologies for the aggressive font with that one. But let's go back to Power Automate here. Okay, I'm going to go to home. Let's go to home again. Okay, now you'll see front and center, Microsoft is really pushing Copilot, and we are going to use it here. So I'm going to paste this into my Copilot. I will paste it into the chat as well. And those of you who have used Copilot before know that it is a little volatile. So you might get something very different than me. You might get a lot of help. You might not get too much help. In any case, we'll walk through this again, and I'll use this as a basis. It's not going to do everything for us, but hopefully it'll be a good start. So again, it might be easier to read in the chat. It's going to kind of cut off there. I said, create a monthly recurring flow that triggers on the first day of each month at 9 a.m. Start by listing all rows from the celebrations table in the monthly celebrations file stored on my OneDrive. Convert these records of all employee birthdays and work anniversaries into HTML. Then send an email to all employees with this table in the body celebrating these occasions. Okay. And then we're also going to post this to Teams. All right. So I don't actually think that our file, our workbook, is named this. If we wanted to be more specific, we could make sure that the file is named the same. But I'm going to go ahead and just run this and see what we get here. So Copilot is going to do its best to set this up for us. Okay. This looks decent to me. We are going to be running this on a recurring schedule. It says we're going to get items from SharePoint. That's not exactly true. Okay, we are going to be collecting data from Excel, a table, compose, send an email, post to team. So some of this looks right, some of it doesn't look right. I'm going to go ahead and click next. And again, if you get something completely different, no worries. That's just kind of the nature of the beast here with Copilot. So we'll make sure that we have all our connected places here set up to go. Looks good to me. Let's go ahead and continue. All right. So here's what we're up against. We're going to go one step at a time through this here, okay? So you'll see some of these are in better state than others. All right, recurrence. It says once a month. We're going to give it a start time. I found for some reason, and I don't know why, that it's a good idea to, even if it says 1 month, go ahead and just redo that. I don't know why in Copilot and Power Automate, those settings, something doesn't really add up with what Copilot gives you. So just go ahead and kind of clear this out and fill it in again, and you should be in a better state there. Okay. I'm just going to leave it as UTC. We could change it to your respective time zone, but just for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and leave it as is. And let's make it 9/1/2024. Okay, so this will be the first time that it runs. And I think we could even put 9 o'clock a.m. there. If you're in doubt of something, if you're not sure something's going to work, always a good idea. Okay, so it looks like the flow checker is throwing errors from other things in the flow. So let's go ahead and fix those first, and then make sure that everything up here is set up correctly. Okay, so that's my recurrence. I'm setting up every 1 month, UTC starting at 9 a.m. on September 1st. Okay, now this next step isn't exactly what I want, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that one. And in its place, I'm going to add an action here. And let's search for list rows present in a table. Okay, so we'll use Excel Online. Business, we are going to list rows present in a table. Okay, so this is going to look pretty similar, right? We need to specify where our workbook is located. It is in our OneDrive, and it's going to be the, I think we called it like Power Automate Copilot or something like that. There it is. Okay, and find that table. Okay. So that's looking good to me. Now, again, I'm not worried about the parameters this time because I'm not trying to fill data into Excel this time. I'm trying to read data from Excel. So it's kind of the opposite workflow here. So this is looking good to me. All right, now the next step, what I need to do is I'm going to convert this table into an HTML table. The reason I'm going to do that, and this is a good, you can still use Copilot. So, why would I use HTML to convert an Excel table to be used in a Teams post? And ideally, this is going to be smart enough to share, right? So you can continue to use Copilot even if it didn't really get everything you wanted in that first go. You do still have Copilot over here to help you, write functions or understand concepts or things like that. So the flow converts the Excel table to ensure proper display, right? So Teams can't just take a part of a workbook and display it. It needs to be in HTML format. So what I'm going to do now is use HTML to do that. So this isn't quite right either. Okay, you'll see it didn't really get a lot of this right. Okay, these two look right, post to Teams and Outlook, but that's fine. Let's go ahead and HTML to text here. So we're going to search for HTML to text. Okay, there it is. Actually, I think, no, we want create HTML table. Okay, create HTML. See, there's a lot of connectors. Some of them sound very similar. So it does take some trial and error. So let's go ahead and do this. So it's going to say array to create our table from. We are going to use the set of values from the last flow. Okay, so it says body value. That's just the set of values found from that table. Now we're going to go to advanced parameters. We're going to select the columns from that table. where it says columns, we're going to create custom columns. So the whole goal here, and this is a lot of footwork here, all we're trying to do is take the Excel table and get it into an HTML format so that it can be formatted in Teams and displayed in a Teams post. All right, so we're going to do, there were 3 columns there. There was name, okay, there was date, okay, and there was occasion. All right, so I am going to map each of those from the workbook into our HTML table. Now, I'll tell you right now that date is not going to look very good. Okay, for the sake of time, I'm not going to reformat it. We could use PowerFX to make sure that the date renders smoothly in the table in Teams. But I'm going to go ahead and leave that blank just because we're kind of heading up to the hour. All right, so this is looking good to me right now. Okay, so we have our table set up. Now we want to make sure that our email is ready to go. I'm just going to go ahead and use my own email here. Okay, monthly celebrations, here are the celebrations for this month. Let's go ahead and use the output from that table. So this table should dynamically get inserted into our workbook there. I'm sorry, into our email. Okay, and it looks like Power Automate and Copilot was able to provide us some basic text to use as part of that email. So that part is looking good to me. Okay, last but not least, let's go one more here. We do want to post this into Teams, and it looks like Copilot didn't quite set this up correctly, so we're going to post this as Flowbot. We'll go ahead and post this in a particular channel here in Teams. Okay, I'm just going to use my internal Teams channel here. Okay. All right, so let's wish all our colleagues. Okay, that sounds fine to me. You could, finesse that if you wish. But the important part for us to test is that the output of that table gets added. Okay, so this is all looking really good to me. I'm going to go ahead and save it. And again, if there are any issues with how this flow is set up, Power Automate should tell us about it. Okay, so it didn't like something here, the recurrence. Okay, let's go back here. Okay, so I believe what's happening is it doesn't exactly like this format. Okay, if that happens to you, again, what I would encourage you to do is just re-trigger the interval, the start time, and so forth until you get it to save. Okay, so it still didn't like that. Let me clear this out and see if we can get it to work that way. Okay, so that works. So don't worry about formatting this. It's a little particular as you're seeing. Okay, as long as you're getting the green check mark, we can get it set up to run, at whatever time we want. Again, we're just testing right now, and we can get this set up on our recurrence when we need to. So let me make sure that if there are any questions. I don't think I saw any. So we'll quickly run this. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, this is being recorded. It was in the invite. It was. I mentioned it a lot. It's being recorded. Yes. Okay. And we're gonna test this. Flowbot is just the name for. That's just the name that we're gonna call this thing when it posts to Teams. It needs to be posted from someone. So that's just what it's going to be called, right? The user when we post this. So let's go ahead and test this. Okay. Fortunately, we don't need to wait until the first of the month. I am going to trigger this manually so we don't have to wait. Let's go ahead and test it. Okay. It's going to make sure that our connections are in sync. Okay. We probably want to rename this. This is our Copilot prompt. Let's go ahead and run. Okay. To monitor it, we can go to Flow Runs. Again, check the analytics there. Hopefully we won't run into any problems, but what I'm going to do is, now I don't know if I'm going to be able to show you Teams because all right, there we go. There's our team. Okay, so yeah, this was just set up. It looks like that was today, maybe. Yep, so 12:52, 12:51, we ran this. Okay, so you'll see that these dates are not really well finessed right now and formatted. The reason, again, for that is that these are serial numbers in Excel. Okay, so we would need to do some PowerFX magic to format that into an HTML. Let's go ahead and check my Outlook here. Okay, make sure that it goes up to my training folder here. Okay. And we will see here my monthly celebration. So again, if we wanted to format the dates, we would need Power FX to do that. But that is Power Automate for Excel in a nutshell with a few minutes to go. All sorts of stuff that we didn't do that we could. We could look at conditional formatting, control flows, reading data in, working with things like RSS feeds or APIs and collecting data on a schedule. That kind of ties into how Power Automate compares and contrasts with Power Query. So we could talk about that. We could talk about how to run Office scripts on a schedule. So there's really, really a lot of stuff that you can do with this tool. I think it's in one of the future predictions for me that Excel and Power Automate is going to be a really strong set of skills for Excel users to learn. It really helps Excel users operate as citizen low code, no code developers. So you have your data science with Python and Excel, you have your data analytics with Power Query and Power Pivot. Now you have your citizen developer and citizen data engineer with Power Automate, Power Apps, and Power Platform. So you really can use Excel in all those functions with the help of these tools. Pretty exciting times ahead. With that being said, I'm going to stop the recording. If there are any last questions, yes, the recording will go out. So you will have that. You'll have the links to the feedback form, to the future events, all that stuff. So, if you missed a link, don't worry about it. I'll get it to you shortly. With that being said, let me stop my sharing. And I think that's everything for right now. So have a great rest of your day. And thanks for attending. As always, hope to see you on Monday for Power Query and for some of the other sessions coming up too. Thank you, Houston. Thank you, Matthew. Thanks, everybody, for attending. And we will see you again soon, I hope.